So density is expressed as people per hectare. So a hectare is roughly the size of a rugby pitch. People per hectare is the number of people living in that space. But developers' applications never give density numbers. One wonders why. For example, at the TOC open house, they displayed a density panel I show here, which was supposedly informative. But this density panel gave no density numbers, so we calculated them. Next slide, please. This graph shows people density per hectare. What would it be like if we found ourselves living somewhere that had one of these densities per hectare? Well, let's see. Next slide, please. The province set a minimum density for Midtown of 20,600 people and jobs for all 103 hectares. The ratio of people to jobs, according to planners, is 65% residents to 35% jobs. So 65% of 20,600 is 13,390 residents, as shown in the top left. And there are 65 hectares of Midtown that can be developed. So dividing 13,390 by 65 gives about 200 people per hectare. What is that like? Well, this is Vancouver West End, which has a density of 238 people per hectare. Next slide, please. Watson provided an independent estimate of the likely population in Midtown by 2051 of 29,900. Another study concluded the market could absorb at most a supply of housing at about this same level of 30,000 by 2051. Using the same calculation method as before gives us 19,435 people, a density of 299 people per hectare. A comparable community of about 1 square kilometer like Midtown at 300 people per hectare could be mid-rise housing, as in Paris on the left picture, or a mix of towers and townhouses, as in the Old Town in Vancouver on the right. Next slide, please. The OPA controls density using FSI, ranging from 2 FSI up to a maximum of 6 FSI around the GO station. If developers all build the maximum FSI, there'll be a total of about 53,000 people and jobs in Midtown, or about 36,000 people, which is about 550 people per hectare. The only comparable community with a density as high as 550 per hectare in North America is the obvious one, Manhattan. But even in Manhattan, most districts are 400 people per hectare or less. Only Upper East Side ranges from 400 to 650 people. As you can see, it is located alongside Central Park. It's connected with subways and maximum walkability in that city. And this is the maximum level of our Midtown OPA. Next slide, please. Well, the TOC proposal is for 4.9 hectares of land opposite the GO station. To compare the OPA to the COC entailed a calculation of the density the OPA would allow for those 4.9 hectares. So starting at FSI of 6 and crunching the numbers to give units, and at a true people per unit gives the number of residents in 4.9 hectares. Divided by 4.9 gives an OPA people per density per hectare of 1,360 for the TOC lands. Different assumptions can give a range between 1,100 and 1,400 people per hectare. At this level of density, there's only one comparison of about 1 square kilometer that I could find. Mongkok, a district of Hong Kong, with a density of about 1,300 people per hectare, pictured here. Next slide, please. The TOC proposal does not provide density numbers. Based on the 6,908 apartments they propose, and using again a people per unit of 2, as we have done in all the other comparisons, we get a people density per hectare of 2,820. Different calculation assumptions can give a range of 2,400 to over 3,000 per hectare. I was lost for comparison. Google, ChatGPT, they all gave up. The closest ChatGPT could find in comparable density was the Dharavi slum in India at 2,700 people per hectare. So in the picture, I had to stack Hong Kong 2 to 3 times. The TOC would be well over twice the densest modern community in the world. Next slide, please. The TOC proposal assumes it's the only development in Midtown, surrounded by parks and amenities provided by others. But it's surrounded by other developers who want to build to the maximum. The graph here adds some of those developments with applications already in place. And as the thin blue line shows, they are all well in excess of the OPA maximum density. And the model shown here illustrates the TOC proposed towers in red, but this time surrounded by other developments up to the maximum allowable FSI. Next slide, please. So to summarize, even by itself, the TOC fails the test of any measure of a livable community. At almost 3 times the densest district in the world, its density is so extreme as to be laughable. In terms of the whole of Midtown, the TOC would destroy any chance the OPA has of creating a livable community. It could undermine the market for other developments. Midtown might become a concentration of extreme density surrounded by wasteland. Or the TOC will become the legal benchmark for unfettered development of extreme density across Midtown. Next slide, please. The OPA, at maximum FSI, the OPA is at the very limit of what is livable high density. It's the equivalent of dumping the densest part of Manhattan into a space sandwiched between the highway and the railway. It is a result of professional planning for Midtown, with input from independent experts, landowners, and a lot of input from the public. It's a bold move indeed, and very high risk. It will require significant investment in transit, parks, and community amenities to make it a livable community. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Gallo.